allowing yourself to change is really powerful. And I feel underestimated in a lot of senses, especially when you begin to realize that the outside world is a reflection of your internal world. Change comes from within, and the only constant is change. We're living and dying so much in every minute, never mind day, never mind week, month, year, lifetime. Our cells regenerate how quickly they want to renew and to change and to clear out and to filter. And you know, what a powerful expression of life to allow yourself, like your highest self, to be born through you, through the changes that you choose in any moment of any day. And I think that it's, when I said like a disservice, it's almost missed. Opportunities are missed so often because of really patterns that run our lives in our subconscious mind. But change has been really coming up for me recently. And a big part of this year of 2024, I do believe, is continuing my self-development as it has over the past decade. But I'm finally feeling the massive changes that have kind of built momentum, if you will, over the past several years. And especially coming off of the transformational Costa Rica trip, we're in such a short amount of time. I discovered so many changes that I could implement in my life. And it was almost though I was resisting those changes. And that's why I think it's really important to have this conversation, because if I was resisting it, and I am constantly trying to change and evolve, I'm now understanding, or at least I have a better understanding of how difficult it can be for others to change.
Do you mean that like up until recently, you had been resisting like all these different changes?
I believe so, because I have changed so much over this 10-year period. And what I was doing to get to kind of all of these different stages of this evolution within a decade of, you know, wellness and bettering myself, spiritual journey. It's like the things that worked got me to this point, but now it's like I'm at the the roadblock, and it's like I either got to move it, I got to go into, I got to do something. It was like I was resisting the change. It was like, wait, but I've changed so much, and this has worked up to this point. Like I'm not going to do anything else. Like this is working, but it really wasn't working. I just was resisting it because I had changed so much. And not saying 10 years is a short amount of time, but when you think of the many lifetimes, and like I've been on the earth within this lifetime for, 36 years. And I say 10 years, really, it's probably condensed down to like 5, being an intensive journey of change.
Yeah, I think so often we find ourselves, I know I have, like, we almost attach to and identify by the different like modalities that we've done, or the different phases we've gone through, or the different labels we've put on ourselves.
Yeah.
It's like, I eat this way, I train this way, I live this way, I dress this way. So we start to begin to think that that's who we are. And then it becomes really, really challenging to give that up.
Yeah.
Where, like you said before, like life is change. Life is like a dynamic, like, happening. It's nothing stays the same. It's like people are probably the only thing on the planet that like attempts to stay the same and not just give into that dynamic flow of life. But it's really interesting, I think, along those lines is to start really asking, like, who am I? Or, like, who is Elise? Because, like, you're not your hairstyle, you're not the clothes you're wearing, you're not even what you look like. Because just from experience, in the 18 years I've known you, like, you've changed the way you wear your hair, you've changed the way that you, like, the way that you look has changed, your body composition has changed, your style and, like, the clothes you wear has changed. You've had how many jobs? Like, you're not your job, you're not, like, your title.
Yeah.
You're not, like, the way that you work out, or even, like, the things that you like. We're not our preferences. Like, the more you really start to lean into what am I not, you start to realize what's left is what you are. Like, you're not even, like you said, your physical body. Your cells are constantly changing at most 7 years, and different cells in different parts of the body last for different lengths of time. Every day we're turning over billions, if not trillions, of cells. And after 7 years, for sure, like, there's not a single cell in your body that was there 7 years ago. So we have this idea of who we are, and we tend to think of our body as a part of that. But if I think back to who I was 10 years ago, I'm not a single one of the same cells is here. So, like, so what am I, right? Who is Dan? If my body's gone, I'm wearing all new clothes, I have a new job, I live in a new place, I like different things, but there's, like, an essence of what I am that like exists through all of that. And it's so fascinating to, like, really sit with that and strip away those other things.
Absolutely.
While we're on this, Alan Watts has a really good analogy for this. It could be kind of anything, but he's like a college campus is a really good, or like a university is a really good example of this same idea, where you have a school, and they're like this organization. You have faculty, you have teachers, like you have like the dean, you have a student body, you have buildings, you have books, you have all these things. And then over time, the students all graduate and new students come. So it's like, okay, well, the school isn't the students. The professors leave and are replaced by new professors. Buildings get knocked down and you build new building. Like, everything changes over time. Where you look at, like, I was gonna say, like, a school like Harvard that's been around for a long time. They have a lot of the same buildings, but they've been around for hundreds of years. All those students are gone, all the teachers are gone, all the faculty is gone, the custodians are gone, the groundskeepers are gone. Everybody who, like, created that school and, like, was, like, what it is has moved on and gone and left. They teach different books. They have different textbooks. They have, like, different classes that weren't there in the beginning. The curriculum has changed over time, but the essence of the school stays. And there's people that graduate from Harvard now, and they're a Harvard graduate, and they're part of this group of people that have been graduating from Harvard for hundreds of years. So there's, like, this continuing essence, but it's not in any of the physical stuff. And that's, like, what I am. I'm this continuing essence, but I'm not in any of the physical stuff. I'm not in anything that can change. Is no longer me.
Yeah.
And it's really, really interesting to, like, think about ourselves as sort of like an essence more so than anything else.
For sure. And one of the biggest changes that I'm going through right now is with my physical body, because I'm laughing because for probably at least the last few years, if not longer, there have been so many signs in the universe pinging me to do yoga, begin practicing yoga. I mean, constantly. But
I think we literally talked about this on the podcast like a year ago.
Yeah. And I think the reason why I brush it off is because when we're in this wellness space, a lot of people practice yoga. I'm just getting these things from the universe. And I specifically remember Kyle Kingsbury was talking on I'm not sure if it was his podcast or he was talking to someone else, but he was talking about an ayahuasca journey that he went on. And within the journey, it like, I'm not sure who came to him, but like whether his higher self or whoever it was, saying like, what you need to do is yoga. Do yoga, do yoga. So he was like, all right, I'm all in on yoga. Didn't do it though, really. And then he did like another ayahuasca ceremony, however long it was. And his higher self came back again. I'm not sure if it was higher self. I'm butchering the story a little bit, but they said, you haven't done yoga. You're not getting another lesson until you do it. It's like hammering in the head. And I appreciate that so much because I feel, even though I wasn't in an ayahuasca ceremony, it's so many of these stories that were coming to me and pings of do yoga, do yoga, do yoga. And in Costa Rica, that's all we did. It was a week of yoga and movements during the day and at night. And it just, I incorporated yoga probably a little bit over the past year, but here and there. And the first day we did yoga in Costa Rica, I told the instructor who was doing it as I was laying in Shavasana, which is like your end laying, just like taking in all of the movements and what you did for your body. I felt the life force energy, like the chi, like emanating from like my arms and radiating. It was like, oh my gosh. I really did not understand the profound effects that it has, because I've just always had this mentality of workout, muscle burns fat, like you can't get fat. Like I just still had that unhealthy relationship with food and working out, that I was using it not fully as a punishment for myself, but maybe in a way because it made me feel better if I overate a little bit or had a treat the next morning. I knew I was going to get a good workout in. I was going to be burned off, and it was like, oh yes. So getting back from Costa Rica, which has been over a month and a half now, all I have been doing is yoga. I think the few times I've worked out, I haven't picked up more than 20 pounds of weight. And that's 2 10-pound dumbbells. And my body just, I feel it thanking me. Like, I don't think I realized the strain and stress that I was putting on it, where it wasn't an acute stress anymore. It was a culmination of 10 years of working out really, really, really hard as like this little girl that I don't need to, like I have the muscle already that I need on my body. But I resisted it for so long. I was almost like afraid. And in the back of my mind, I was thinking to myself, everybody knows me as someone who lifts really heavy and I'm really, really strong. What if I lose this strength? Like, what are people going to think of me? This is like a part of our business. This is a part of our identity. This is a part of my identity. How are people going to look at me now? I've had to let that go. But I have so much more of a reverence and respect for what I went through, because that version of me got me to this point. And it's like, now you can take a breather. Look at, you're not gaining any weight. If anything, you're beginning to get leaner, you're losing muscle, but that's like an okay thing. You don't need to lift 150 pounds squat on your back. Like, it's okay. And I just like, I can't explain it through words. I can just try to say like, it's a different feeling. I feel so much better. I feel more confident. I also am beginning to understand the different yoga videos that I'm watching and the people who are teaching me and practicing, the way that you connect with your breath in the certain areas of your body, and it can be what you want it to be. I was actually talking to the yoga instructor that was in Costa Rica with us, and she was like, I can get on the mat and I know it's going to be what I need it to be. If I need it to be restorative, it's going to be that. If I need it to be really intensive with long holds and like a kind of like more of a workout, that's because some of those poses that you need to hold, I'm shaking. Like, there is a strength to yoga that I do not have. It's a different strength. And so it's like I'm almost re-falling in love with a different workout. It's just different.
Yeah. And it's like, not to say that like one way is right or wrong. It's just like you said, it's like that got you to where you needed to be. And then it wasn't serving you in the same way. And now it seems like you're bringing more balance into your life, where it's like, just because you've had this like revelation also doesn't mean you're not going to strength train
Right, exactly.
in like the coming months or whenever the time is right. It's a matter of like connecting to yourself, listening to what your body is asking for, bringing that balance back. But then, like, if you swing too far into like the yoga, you're going to run into the same problem.
Yeah.
It's a matter of like doing this until it's not what you need, and then finding the right balance. And it's like nothing is ever perfect. It's like you swing to one side a little bit and you swing back, and like you can get like the pendulum swing to be like a little smaller and a little closer, where it's just a little bit over the line and then a little bit over the line, rather than having these big swings where it's like, all I'm going to do is lift heavy, all I'm going to do is yoga, where it can be like, and then eventually it comes back, meets in the middle, where it's like, I'm going to do a little strength training today, I'm going to do a little yoga tomorrow, I'm going to go for a run or a walk, and just like finding what your body needs, because everybody's needs are going to be different from day to day, and then like month to month, year to year, like there's blocks of time where you're going to need different things. And it's like allowing yourself to connect to your needs more so than being hung up on what the thing is. So it's like your identity now doesn't need to be like yogi or like yoga girl. Like it's just, you're just Elise, and you're just doing what is best for you in that day. I've used the analogy before, like the vehicle that gets you somewhere isn't necessarily the vehicle you need to keep moving. Like if you and I wanted to go to like England, first we would need to go get in a car, drive to the airport. Then once we got to the airport, we wouldn't be able to drive anymore. So we'd have to get out of the car, get onto a plane, fly across the ocean. But then when we land at the airport in like the UK, we wouldn't want to fly anymore because then we'd miss it. So we'd have to get out and find a car. Like, but that doesn't mean that the car we took to the airport was wrong. It was exactly what we needed to get there. But then the plane was exactly what we needed to get across the ocean. But then once we're there, that's no longer what we need until the time comes that we need to go home. And then a plane is the perfect vehicle again. So we're going to go through stages and periods in our life where the vehicle that's perfect for us is different. But that doesn't mean that all the other vehicles we had taken to that point were wrong. No, so it's like, so it's like embracing that part of it, where it's like change is great. And also knowing that like just because you changed doesn't mean that everything wasn't perfect up until then.
Absolutely.
Which I think is really cool. And that like works for everything. I think he's Neil Strauss, the author, who I've heard say a bunch of times that like in especially in the US or in the West, like in our modern society, like we tend to view any relationship that doesn't last forever as a failure. But it's like you could, even be like married and divorced, and that was perfect because what you got out of that relationship was exactly what you needed until it wasn't. But then would you be better off staying in a relationship that was no longer serving either of you just to be consistent and be like, what would people think of me? What would people think I made the wrong choice? So it's like you can look back at our life and like every relationship we've had, whether it's like a romantic relationship or like our friends, like you have friends, everybody has like that best friend from like second grade they never talk to again after third grade. But that doesn't mean that that wasn't perfect for your development at that time and for theirs and for the whole community. Like you guys being friends was the best thing at the time. And then you just allow change. Like you don't need to like stay best friends with somebody who you have nothing in common with and don't really like hanging out with, just because what are people going to say if we're not friends anymore? But I think it's a really, really interesting way. We recently recorded a podcast about the power of consistency.
I was going to say, let's dive into that, because that I think was a big thing that was chirping in the back of my ear. Consistency is key. And I do believe that wholeheartedly up until a point. Like
yeah. And it's like, and I feel like it's kind of like what I was saying about yoga. Like using this example, you're going to, like, in order for you to get better at yoga, you need to do yoga consistently.
Right.
Doing one day of yoga every year there's not going to be any progression or really benefit. Like you'll benefit, like, oh, I feel better right now, but then the rest of the year, you don't benefit from that one yoga class. It's over. But you could, if you do yoga every day for a year, you're going to get really good at yoga. Your body is going to change. Your connection to your body is going to change. Your like everything, your breath, like all these things are going to improve because of the consistency. Because I would argue that you could do like the best yoga class in the world once every 2 weeks, or you could do like just some random like yoga class at the YMCA. That's fine every day, and you'd benefit more from the one you do consistently. So this is sort of the difference. Like consistency in working towards a goal is about like showing up and doing it over and over and getting good and like progressing and building off of the previous day. But to keep doing something over and over that's no longer serving you, there's no benefit. But what would I call it? Like the thing that is always present is like if you consistently do the thing that's best for you. And then it's like, it doesn't matter if that's weight training, if that's yoga, if that's running, if that's taking a day off, you're consistently choosing to honor yourself with the best possible practice for that day. That's consistency. And when you're doing that, like, you don't need to worry about people judging you for not being consistent enough at yoga or consistently lifting heavy weights, like you said. Like, it's consistently being you. This, while we're on this real quick, I feel like you're about to say something, but I do want to. I was when we were kind of preparing for this, I was thinking about that because we were like, so I was thinking about the fact that people will be consistent for consistency's sake. And to their own detriment. Versus, and then I was thinking, well, I don't want to just shit all over consistency because I really believe it's like the best thing for you. And like consistency will move the needle more than anything else. But I want to really try to explain this. And I was thinking, and what always comes back to me is the quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson in Self-Reliance, which says, "A foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds." And I know I've said it on the podcast a few times before. So it's one of my favorite quotes. So I wanted to read a little bit more of that section from Self-Reliance.
Okay.
So I can put it, because there's a lot of what I'm saying. I can never remember. It was in the 1800s. Oh,
wow.
So it's still very relevant, which I think is awesome. I love reading like old texts, and like the books are where all the answers are. Like people successfully clues. There's people who have figured things out before, and you can avoid a lot of suffering by learning from other people's mistakes. And I think this one just always spoke to me. And it says, this is from Self-Reliance by Ralph Waldo Emerson. It says, "The other terror that scares us from self-trust is our consistency, a reverence for our past act or word, because the eyes of others have no other data for computing our orbit than our past acts, and we are loath to disappoint them." Which is exactly what we're saying. He says, "But why should you keep your head over your shoulder? Why drag about this corpse of your memory, lest you contradict somewhat what you have stated in this or that public place? Suppose you should contradict yourself. What then? It seems to be a rule of wisdom never to rely on your memory alone, scarcely even in acts of pure memory, but to bring the past for judgment into the thousand-eyed present, and live ever in a new day. In your metaphysics, you have denied personality to the deity. Yet when the devout motions of the soul come, yield to them heart and life. Though they should clothe God with shape and color, leave your theory as Joseph his coat in the hand of the harlot and flee. A foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds, adored by little statesmen and philosophers and divines. With consistency, a great soul has simply nothing to do. He may as well concern himself with his shadow on the wall. speak what you think now in hard words, and tomorrow speak what tomorrow thinks in hard words again, though it contradict everything you said today. Ah, so you shall be sure to be misunderstood. Is it so bad then to be misunderstood? Pythagoras was misunderstood, and Socrates, and Jesus, and Luther, and Copernicus, and Galileo, and Newton, and every pure and wise spirit that ever took flesh. To be great is to be misunderstood. Isn't that awesome?
Wow, that's absolutely. I've never read it. I know that you're obsessed with the book, but wow, holy.
Yeah, Self-Reliance was like the first book that really like got me to start thinking about the world differently. And I love that. Like to be great is to be misunderstood. It's like you can't limit yourself in any way to make the people around you more comfortable, or just to like so that they can label you better. And I think that's really, really important. It's like we do things simply because we know people expect us to do them.
Yeah.
And we resist life to do it. Like life, we said in the beginning, life is this dynamic, like happening. And all of life is change. Everything in the world, there's seasons, there's days, there's cycles. Everything is always changing. And when we like resist that change, we're resisting the flow of life. And you can't possibly be the best version of yourself if you're resisting the flow of life. It doesn't make any sense. So I wanted to make sure I was clear about consistency can be both the most powerful thing until we start to use it against ourselves.
Parenting can be stressful and even overwhelming, especially if you have an overly sensitive child. What if there was a way to better understand, guide, and nurture your child's unique sensitivity and emotional intelligence to set them up for success on their developmental journey? Rooted Rhythm's signature course, Tuned In, offers a transformational process for parents of highly sensitive, super feeling, wise, and empathetic children. You know, Dan and I don't have children of our own, but we were both highly sensitive children growing up. And we know firsthand how difficult it can be to feel and process emotions in a productive and constructive way at such a young age. Recently, having gone through the Tuned In course, we both took away so much valuable information and practical tools we could utilize to reparent ourselves and to understand how to better use our sensitive nature to deepen our connection to ourselves as well as the world around us. The Tuned In course teaches parents concrete skills to meet their sensitive kids' needs in moments of intensity, increases their ability to connect deeply with their children, and supports a process of inner healing to shift how they relate to parenting. Each module offers unique grounding and embodiment meditations, lectures full of both evidence-based and practical content, and supplementary exercises to support in the implementation of new skills. Parents who have taken this course report walking away from the experience feeling relaxed in their being and confident to parent their children in a way that both feels most true to them as a parent as well as most supportive for their children. If this resonates with you as a parent or simply for yourself, we are excited to offer our listeners $100 off of this transformational course. Click the link in our show notes, which goes directly to the Rooted Rhythm Tuned In course website, and enter the discount code DEEPLIFE, all one word, to receive $100 off of the Tuned In course.
I think that you did a good job explaining that. I think I really enjoyed listening to that quote. And right before you started reading, I was just going to read what I had written down before this when we were taking notes on it, which I feel goes beautifully with it, because I certainly definitely channeled this from my higher self. Anything you do, you allow others to do as long as you're willing to be seen.
Yeah.
Shit. Which I've hidden for so long. I'm literally like, I'm afraid to tell people that I've only done music for the last month and a half. But that's what allows other people to change. I'm
Yeah.
changing, so see me change. You can change too. Like, kind of like you said, you don't have to stay in a marriage. You don't have to stay in a job. Like, if you wholeheartedly know that it's not serving your highest and greatest good anymore, it's like the only constant is change. So I think that is also something that I have been really grappling with, because being seen is really quite powerful also.
Yes.
And hard to do, because it opens yourself up to the ridicule and the judgment, and for other people to say, well, wait, you've changed, this isn't. And it's like, wait, why is that such a bad thing? Like, why is there so much resistance to change when that is the most natural part of life?
Yeah.
And when we were talking before the episode started recording, I asked you a question because I felt this as a question that might come up from people listening, because it's like, how do you tell when you need to change or not? And I'm using the word need as opposed to want, because I guess it could be really interchangeable in this aspect, because so many people want to change but then fall back. They're too scared, they resist, exactly like you were talking about in so beautifully put in the Emerson books here. But yeah, how do you know?
Yeah. I mean, I said first, like, I don't know how you know, but I strongly believe we all know.
I know, it's such a
You know
big
what I
thought.
mean?
I know.
They're like,
It's
capital K, no.
right.
Like, we know when our job isn't right for us. We know when our relationship isn't right for us. We know when we're making choices that aren't in alignment with who we want to be. And I think we know instantly. Like, I can speak for myself for sure. I've made choices and instantly, like, you feel sick and it's like, I don't know why I just did that. Like, this was a bad choice. Like, we know. So it's like, in that moment, you have the opportunity to choose again. Like, do I go with consistency? Do I like, I made my choice, now I'm gonna stick with it? Or do we like stop ourselves and be like, nope, I'm making a new choice. I'm only doing things that feel right. And I don't mean that to be like hedonistic in the sense of like, I'm only like seeking pleasure and like, oh, I'll just give me the cake, or I'm not even gonna have dinner, I'm just gonna have dessert, and I'm gonna go drink and party and do drugs. I'm gonna do everything that makes me feel good. Because also when you do those things, you wake up in the morning and you're like, oh, that was not a good choice. And that's our knowing. Like, we know that we didn't do what was in alignment with our best good. Even if in the moment it felt pleasurable, we still know.
And that's almost the beauty of life, because we're given the choice to remain the same, do something exactly as we did, or to do it differently. And it's like that, the choice that you're making is either going to keep you stuck in the past or open yourself up to a new possibility. And life is all about new possibilities. When you're looking for that, and like you're saying, it is that capital no, like, when things are just not going well, it's a feeling. It's more of a feel, like, this doesn't feel good anymore. Like, I'm not excited to go to work. I'm not excited to see my partner. I'm not excited to do an activity or a hobby that I did for 30 years. Just let it go. Just let it go. It's much easier said than done. Trust me, I'm obviously explaining how difficult it is, but it's also, if you do repeat a choice that keeps you in the same past pattern, it's also okay. Allow yourself to just choose differently the next time, because the opportunity will present itself, whether it be later that day or the next day or the following day. And that's when the consistent newer choices are beneficial.
When you can almost like identify as somebody who makes choices that support themselves, rather than identify as the person that keeps doing that other choice. And you can kind of honor that bad choice. Because just like I was saying about relationships before, or about like the plane we would take to fly across the ocean. It's like, it served you. And then like, so even when you make a choice of something simple, like you ate something that doesn't agree with you. And like we know, like maybe like it's like pizza or something. Like if I were to eat too much pizza, I would feel sick. It's been a while, but I've also been in a lot of situations where I knew that if I eat too much pizza, I'm going to feel sick, and I ate an entire pizza.
Yeah.
Because it's pleasurable in the moment, and I've done it, and then I regret it. And then you can either beat yourself up over it, or you can be like, you know what? I'm grateful that that opportunity presented itself, because now I really know that next time I have the opportunity to eat an entire pizza, I'm going to say no, or I'm going to have a slice.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like that time that you made the wrong choice and that it hurt and you had an upset stomach and you didn't feel good and you were kind of down on yourself was a good thing, because it set you up for making a better choice in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And you can just be grateful that you learned a lesson, and then learn the lesson. Don't keep making the same mistake.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that possibly keeps people stuck too is exactly like I was saying at the beginning, when I kind of have fallen newly in love with yoga. People who do label themselves as a certain either type of person, or identifying with their job or something that they do, it makes it so hard to change, because you've formed an attachment that most likely you're unaware of, that's just kind of trapped in that subconscious. It's a pattern of yours that we always say, like, you must interrupt this pattern. But to change that, not only is it hard to go through yourself, and once you go through it yourself, then you've got the additional layer of, oh, now I have to show everybody else that I've changed, which is kind of just what I want to full circle come back around to, because it's what I was writing down, that I have had so much fear around being seen, because there have been so many versions of me, and now a new one's coming again. But all of that fear is just internal fear, right? Kind of as they described at the beginning, change happens within. Like, if I am changing, I must also allow other people to change too.
Yeah.
So the reason I'm saying that is, like, if I am free to be me and change as constantly and quickly as I am, it allows other people to be themselves and change too. Because when I think of the people who I know and have known the longest, I kind of have the same idea of them. Like, I know some people have changed, I can point out some, but others have not. And it's like, oh, okay. But if I'm allowing myself to change and see myself change, it's giving those people the opportunity to change and be seen through their change as well.
Yeah. It's also like on the same, like there's people that you see, because I know I do this, like I just assume they're the same. So there's also like, the more I change, the more I realize how much other people change.
Yes, I think you said it much better than I did. Yes.
So it's a little bit different, because it's like, it's two different ways of allowing people to change. But in one sense, it's like maybe they are changing, and I just choose not to see it because it's more comfortable for me to have my image of who they are. And at the same time, maybe those people are afraid to change because they think they're going to be judged. And you can go into a situation and almost like encourage change. Like, oh, you keep talking about this thing. Like, why don't you do it? Like, you keep talking about how much you don't like your job. Why don't you find a new one? Like, what are you into? What are you interested in? And you can really like support people and make it easier for them.
Yes.
To feel seen. Essentially.
Yeah. And there's a bit of unlearning that kind of comes with it, in understanding that every person is different and unique. And how cool is it that, this person acts a certain way, this one looks a certain way, this one talks a certain way, this one thinks a certain way. It's embracing the uniqueness of everybody as opposed to fitting them into a box that you're comfortable in.
Right. Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying about me. It's like, okay, I'm comfortable because I know I've done this, and I'm comfortable with this person because I know she or he is going to act this certain way.
Right.
It's like, oh, wait a minute. It's doing me a disservice. It's doing the other person a disservice, and it's not allowing me to grow and change and elevate and evolve and create new expansive ways of like thinking and seeing other people. Like, how cool is it to see someone change?
Yeah, it's so powerful and so like just exciting.
Yeah.
You can be really excited for people. And it also like in that moment of experiencing somebody differently, it allows you to literally change how you experience this person.
Yes.
Like
and your relationship with them.
Yes. And it's like, that's like, I keep saying, like, life is dynamic. So, and every aspect of life is dynamic. Relationships are dynamic. Just like conversations are dynamic. Like, who wants to just have the same conversation over and over? Like, you can be in like a dynamic conversation where you're like hearing each other, like really, really hearing each other and like understanding each other and not just thinking of the next thing to say, or if like every time you say something, I'm like trying to fit it into my like lease box of like who I think you are. I'm not really listening to you.
Right.
So it's like, it's a better experience. It's a better relationship when the relationship is dynamic and you guys can grow and like change around each other and separately and together. You can change. Like in our relationship, for example, like you've changed a lot, I've changed a lot, and our relationship has changed a lot. And not all like it wasn't all together.
No.
It was like different things change, and then something else changes, and then something else and they all kind of interplay, because a lot of it is because we've allowed change, and we've made change like almost like a priority or something, or it's a value of ours. We both value change, and that is expressed in our relationship. That's like constantly changing and constantly evolving. I just think, I don't know, I just thought it's really interesting.
I actually did not. We've been talking about values a lot for us individually. I don't want to get too much into it, but I did not in a relationship. Yeah, it is.
And even individually, like I think we both value changing and evolving very highly. So it just makes sense that between the two of us, we would like value a relationship that can change.
Yes. Yes, because there's also a surrender to like, you're perfect in this moment. Like, meaning our relationship.
Yes.
Talk about like I love you for who you are, and I love you for who you're becoming. Because I've seen so much of the changes.
Yeah. And really like not trying to change each other.
Ooh, yeah.
Which is
did that. I did for sure.
Yeah. Yes, you did. But I think that's like a very common thing in relationships.
Yeah.
It's like one person will try to change the other.
Yes.
Or one person will change and the other one won't. And you get in these, like, you'll see people, like couples that get in a fight where it's like, you've changed. And you're like, of course I've changed. Like, you haven't changed. What the fuck? It's like, you're both like, it's not working because there's not like an understanding and allowance for change. And that doesn't necessarily mean either one is right or wrong, but their values aren't in alignment.
So I wrote this down too. Like, it kind of does go interestingly with what you just said. Am I willing to actually see people for who they are in their truest expression without it making me feel uncomfortable or trying to change them or tell them that they're quote unquote wrong.
Yeah.
That's really powerful. Like, can you be with someone that has changed without it triggering you or making you feel uncomfortable? And even if it does, what a beautiful opportunity to dig deeper, to understand, why am I triggered in a sense? It's probably actually your higher self knocking at the door saying, well, you're seeing them change.
Yeah.
This is a clue. Here we go. Our triggers, the judgments, our reaction, those are our biggest teachers. And when we can identify them in situations like this, what a beautiful opportunity to look inward to see, well, maybe there is an opportunity for me to change, or maybe I am being called to change and I've just suppressed that or resisted it for too long. And now it's being reflected back to me.
Yeah. And it's kind of like I said before, it's this idea of like resisting life. And when we are resisting life, then we're either going to be really inspired by like nature and life, or like triggered by it. And when I say like life or nature, I also mean people. Like, we are nature. So like when I see you stop resisting life and like flow with it, that's inspiring to me to want to do the same, because I value that. Where if I was really fighting against it and I'm like, no, I want everything to be exactly how it was yesterday, then I'm going to get really upset at you as you change. And it's because I'm the one resisting. It's not that you're like leaving me or like leaving me behind as you grow. It's that I want you to stop growing and come resist with me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
One of the things that I think I am also working on as I am this year is all about changing and discovering, who I actually truly am and what lights me up, what makes me happy. Because the things that I thought did are dissolving. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just, it's really evolving too at the same time. But change helps you discover who you are and who you want to be. So it's kind of going back to, in every situation, you're given two choices: to stay the same or to choose. And you really can't choose wrong. Because if you choose something differently and it doesn't go the way that you wanted it to go, bam, incredible lesson.
Yeah.
Okay, we're not doing that anymore. So then you either have a different choice, you go back to the same, and if that's uncomfortable, then another choice is going to present itself. Like, if we look for choices as opportunities to learn and grow, that is such a huge reframe in your mind, as opposed to simply staying stuck in the same because it's comfortable. Do you know what I mean?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think it's
because I'm still discovering. Like, I guess probably in the back of my mind, I thought that I would work out really hard for like my entire life. I don't know. But one day I was given the opportunity, kind of like forced to me at this point. You're doing yoga in Costa Rica. You don't even have the option to, but I'm just being silly here. But it's like, oh, okay. This did allow me the opportunity to go down this path of discovering a new way to be. Capital B, because it's giving me life. I'm so excited. I love doing it each and every day. I look forward to it. But then it's also an opportunity to continue what I've learned in the past and taking that from me, because it was beneficial. Like you're saying, like I already said to you, oh, okay, like I know over the weekend I'm gonna do some strength training because my body's calling for it. It's like that part of me is come with me. I've just chosen to incorporate a new, I guess, modality in my life that's becoming really beneficial.
Yeah, it's like thinking about. I love this example. I think the yoga versus working out kind of example, because it's kind of simple and I think people can relate to it. And I think that the biggest lesson that's coming from it for you doesn't have anything to do with like exercise. It's about listening to the little like pings and the little like, you for at least a year now, it has been like this progression of probably slightly louder and louder whispers to like some yoga. And then it'll be like you're not listening, so you get like an injury or something like, oh, like my shoulder's bothering me, my wrists are bothering me, I don't want to lift weights right now, but I'm going to do it because that's what I do. And then it's like yoga, and you're like, no. And then finally you got into exactly what you said, like you found yourself in a situation where like the only option was to do yoga because there were no weights to lift. There wasn't an option to train harder. And you were like, this is amazing. But it's like, you're almost like being rewarded for finally listening.
Yeah.
More so than it's like yoga's the answer.
I love that you just said it. Yeah, I appreciate that. The Dan has just such a unique ability to uncover the deeper meaning behind really these stories that I'm telling myself and anybody else. It's just, it's beautifully put there. I appreciate that because for so long too, I haven't listened to myself.
Right.
And I have pushed down so much of what I wanted to do, changes, everything. And it's like, that's kind of exactly encapsulating what this year is going to be, listening to myself, doing things that really excite me. And if it's like a bland, mundane, I don't know if I want to do that, it's a no. If it's not like, I want to listen to myself because as I am beginning to listen to myself, it's like, okay, she knows. My higher aspect of me, that highest version of me, she knows. And I am like, of course.
And I think that's like the way it just goes with everything. Is like the more you're willing to accept it, the more it comes. Like the more you are asking before, like, how do you know? Well, it's like the more you listen to that voice, the more it speaks to you, the more clearly you're going to hear it. So it's like you do something and it's like, oh, this just doesn't feel right. But you keep doing it, then you're not strengthening that communication with your higher self or your, whatever you want to call it. But when you do listen, even if maybe you're wrong, maybe you're mishearing, you can still make choices, but you like, oh, okay, this doesn't feel right. I'm going to make a different choice. And maybe that one's worse, but it's a lesson. Like you said, it's like every choice is a opportunity for us to be like, whoa, not that. So I'm going to go this way and I'm going to try this. And then there are little hints and cues. And I think the more we practice that and like more we connect with our intuition and connect to our higher self, the more clear it becomes. We've been talking a lot, not necessarily on the podcast, just in general lately, about like values and purpose and sort of like same kind of idea, like figuring out why are we here and what do we need, what is our path, kind of. And I think to figure that out, you practice different things. And you find, like you mentioned a few times, like find the things that light you up and get you excited and do it. And if it keeps lighting you up and getting you excited, like keep doing it and see where it leads.
Yeah.
And it's like, maybe that is your purpose. And maybe you're being spoken to in feelings and like what feels good and what doesn't feel good. And it's like, maybe if we do just lean into the things that feel good, it's like our GPS kind of telling us which direction to go and see and do it for a while and do it for months and years and see what comes of it.
Yeah. Because there is no wrong way, as I was saying. It's just it's really trial and error. It's allowing yourself to go down a different path that gives you the opportunity to change, because once you do begin to change, it's like, oh, okay,
that was easy.
Yeah, it's like, all right, I am someone who can do this differently, act differently, think differently, be differently. It's like what we were saying before. It's just the labels that we put on ourselves are so restricting. it's like if you're able to drop, not necessarily even the label, just the idea of the label.
Yeah. Or like, like just know that the labels can come on and off.
Yeah, they're
And
like masks.
Yeah. And it's like you can be different people from day to day.
And that's also, I really do believe, is part of the human experience. Like you exactly saying, like, are we meant to stay the exact same our whole lives? Like I personally, and I've said this on the podcast, I find that boring. Like I get so stir crazy doing one thing for a really long time, being in one area. Like I do like change. I have to kind of dip my little toe in the water first before I dive right in. Sometimes I do dive right in. I mean, it depends. But it's like, that's exciting. And I do often have to remind myself that. It's like this example is like a perfect one. Like, Elise, hello, you love change. Like you've been doing these hard workouts for 10 years. Like it's time, just evolve, just do something differently. Like you don't never have to work out heavy again. It's just incorporate something different because it brings a zest, a newness to life that gets me excited, as opposed to this monotonous routine of doing things like that were beneficial, but it's like the routine got too blah.
Yeah, it stopped serving you.
Yeah, it was like, this isn't exciting anymore.
Yeah.
But I feel so many people are trapped in that. Well, this is just how the day is. This is how life is. This is how the days are. That flows into the weekends. That flows into the months, to the holidays. And it's like, blah, blah, blah. It's Groundhog Day.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just the same thing on repeat. But it's like, if we just do the same thing over and over, then we're not living. But I think when you look back at your life and notice like, oh, there's been all these different iterations of me, that means you have like this really unique skill set and really unique perception. Whereas like we're podcast hosts and there's like millions of podcasts, but also we bring to the podcast all our other experiences. So we can talk about different jobs we've had. We can talk about different relationships we've had. We can talk about different places we've been. We can talk, and all these different things inform who we are in this moment. Where if we only had one experience, we wouldn't have much to talk about.
It's a very good point.
But I think like that's to carry that into like life, just like as a person. Like if you meet some guy and he was an accountant for 60 years and all he knows about is accounting and every book he's ever read was about accounting and he doesn't have any other life experience, like, okay, we can talk
He's going to be really good at telling you what about accounting.
Yeah, he's going to know all about accounting. Yeah,
sure.
and accountants are important. And he also isn't going to probably have much else to talk about. But if it's like this guy's an accountant and he loves history and he loves doing like open mic stand-up nights and he's really into music and he's like, you have all these different things like, oh, you play the cello and you do stand-up comedy and you're an accountant, like this is really interesting. Like, or you skydive, like I didn't know accountants skydive. And it's like all of a sudden all these different things where it's like in his life it might be I had like this 2-year period where I was obsessed with skydiving and it was such a waste of time and it took away from my accounting. But not really, because you got all these experiences. You got to see all these views and have this experience, and like it informs who he is. So that down the road, he's got all these other pieces. He becomes this unique puzzle piece that he's meant to become.
You just reframed it perfectly. It's like looking at your life saying, oh, this wasn't a waste of time. This wasn't a waste of a relationship. This wasn't a waste of job. Oh, it got me to this point. And I'm so much more equipped now to handle change, to overcome anything that, may be thrown in my way, however you can, phrase it. There are so many beautiful opportunities to reframe your mindset around change and what you've gone through and been through, and to take the pieces of you with you that are, eating in your evolving self to continue on this ever-changing path through life that is not linear. Really?
Yeah.
It's all about that spiral staircase.
Yeah.
Viral nature of life in and of itself, allowing yourself to change.
Yeah.
I am allowing myself to change.
Use the analogy before, like a snake. It's okay, like through every season, like shed your skin. And just like there's no need to keep carrying around the old skin. You're still the same snake. Just like a college campus stays the same, or a person stays the same, like over time, that essence will always be there. And you can allow for all the change. It just informs you more and more to be a better version of yourself.